Welcome to the Oklahoma Venture Forum podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey Miller. Today, I am joined by Annette Klosowski of Future Point of View, and she was a recent presenter at the Venture Forum lunch. And now I get the opportunity to ask more questions and learn more about Annette and her business. And so thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So you were just at the luncheon this week, and my mind was blown at all the things that you were talking about. So we utilize AI a lot in our business and automations and things for several years. Like before, it was kind of like out in the open, but automations, machine learning, and AI has been around for a long time. And so tell us sort of about your introduction into this world and how that all came about.
Well, Future Point of View, we're a digital consulting firm. So we do a lot of strategy work and help organizations harness technology to get ahead. So it's really about their, making a profit, getting market share. So we are always kind of ahead of the curve on any kind of a technology trend. So we have been talking and speaking about AI for 12, 13 years.
Wow.
So we're normally speaking on things that, they're we're already speaking and doing a lot around quantum computing. So people aren't buying that because they're just trying to figure out what it is and how it's going to impact. So once we see things start hitting the market, that's when we start putting like services together. So probably when it hit, when AI really rolled out, we were already doing workshops on how do you build an AI strategy, what is AI, and then the next iteration was co-working. So how are you going to work with AIs? And so we do a lot of strategy work. We help industries. We're doing a lot with an entire industry, which is really cool. And then we help organizations. And it could be, we're one of the first to have an AI audit. So it's a lot like a cyber audit or your accounting audit. States have legislated AI audits. So we actually created an AI audit. So we're very future leaning, and then we start like putting together services. So now we're doing a lot of strategy work. We did a series of instructional videos just on Copilot, how to use Copilot, and we took like each Office suite product and talked what AI is doing within that product, because they're starting just to get skill sets raised within Copilot, within Office 365. So that's really how it came about. We did a lot around data science and how to create citizen data sciences, before that was really a thing. And then we were starting to put people through, cohorts through from organizations and teaching that. Once something gets commoditized or, like digital marketing really kind of started being pulled into PR agencies and people could do persona work, and they actually did the work hands-on, we kind of roll out and we're on to the next future leaning thing. So,
I love that.
Yeah, it really is the cool club. When our consultants, they're obviously very smart and bright, but it's really fun because things change all the time and you're learning. I'm older, so it is teaching an old dog new tricks, but it's so good for us to really have to reinvent ourselves and learn new skills. And if I can do it, I think a monkey could do it. So
I'm sure that's not exactly the case, but I understand like the premise of exactly what you're saying, because it's the same. Like, been in marketing for so long, and all of the new things come out, and you have to stay on top of it, or you get left behind.
You do. You have to be relevant, and and even our educational systems, they lag trying to be able to. It takes them a long time to pivot to having to teach skills. And so you come out with degrees. Like, we've had interns this year coming out with marketing degrees that don't feel like they're going to have the skill sets they need because it's really hard. So we always do internships because we just feel like giving back and helping students. So they do a 1 week with us, which they have to be selected, and then they can then get invited to be a summer intern, which I think we had 8 this year. And one of their final projects was they had to build an AI agent, and we gave them the premise of what that agent had to do, and it was very interesting. Then they had to present in front of the whole company, kind of their agent, and if it worked. And so But again, you just need the skills. There's a
Yeah.
lot of resources and there's a lot of ways that you can get that. But again, you're having to harness it yourself.
Yeah, and being like on the forefront of that, like helping young people. I mean, that's
Yeah,
really fun.
it is
I
fun.
love
It
that a
is
lot.
fun. It is
Yeah.
their energy, their willingness to learn. Young people, the younger generations, like they have grown up with what we call the outboard brain, with a tablet, a phone, a smartphone. So, a lot of the way that you think having to use AI is innate to a lot of the younger people. So, or they're just, they're used to it. They don't have the issues with privacy that older people do. There's things that they, I think, naturally understand, so they are very quick on the learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, whenever you were talking on Wednesday, I was kind of laughing because at one point, you're like, if you're a person that's like, get off my lawn, or, what are you doing with this? And there was like this dichotomy that you kept drawing. And I've always thought of myself as very like open to all of these technologies, but then like thinking about them in practice with government and all this other stuff. I did, like, as you were speaking, I thought, well, am I a get off your lawn person? And so it
Yeah.
was really challenging my thinking, and I very much appreciated that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
There's, I think with any type of technology, you have security, which
mhm.
is important, and you have convenience. And I think understanding what you're willing to give up on the security side to get the convenience. So, I use the examples of a lot of us give up our address and phone number and access to get DoorDash because that's important to us, or Uber. We'll take an Uber and we give up part of security to get an Uber. It's the same thing when you look up at AI or an organization and how they deal with data. Or at the state of Oklahoma really trying to integrate AI into agencies, kind of really across the gamut. But there's always something you give up to get a convenience, and then there's just risk to that. So organizations and leaders have to understand what it is that can be the convenience or the value add for customers, but what's the risk? And you have to
Mhm.
manage both of those. And I think every time something comes out, we act like we've never been here before, and I go back, I remember, going from a fax machine to email, and it was like so intrusive. And,
Mhm.
then you go to a cell phone. I mean, we've been through so many iterations
Yeah.
of modernization that we just forget sometimes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Do you find that there are certain types of businesses or industries that are more open to this work that you're doing with them, or is everybody just sort of on the same playing field?
No, we've had a client we've worked with for they're out of Atlanta over 12 years, and we started automation work with them probably 4 years ago. They have probably over 400 bots. I think they would say they kill more than they design now. But they're like an HVAC company, so they do a lot with green buildings and automated a lot of their maintenance. And so the things that they've done is incredible. So we have what we call elite organizations that are really on the bleeding side of they want to be first, and they adopt it. We work with a lot of law firms, CPA firms that are very forward leaning. We're working in the farm credit system, which you wouldn't think maybe as being forward leaning, but they're trying to
Mhm.
catch up. So it kind of depends. Sometimes there are just industries for certain reasons, like government, that just takes longer to do things. And then there's conservative industries, or they're highly regulated. And there's, like, what are the gates we have to think about? So, and then we just sometimes get companies that it has to take the right kind of leader. So it really depends on their leadership. So if you have somebody, because if we're honest, the people leading our companies are 55 and older, did not grow up with even laptops, or computers. So they might not be comfortable, but they're making multi-million-dollar decisions that they don't understand. So it really depends on the leader. So when we see leaders that are progressive and innovative, things go really fast. You
Yeah.
can really help with that. But it's not like the AI is a trend that's just cool and convenient. It's expensive. So companies are really, now there's a huge savings, a huge ROI, but you have to invest in it. And then you have the people issue of, do I have people that have the skill set? So we do a human capital digital assessment, and we can tell people you have the right people and you can execute at this, at this pace, or you have an issue. You have an issue at a leadership level, or you have an issue at just a people, employee level. Because we can give them the best strategy, but you give it to your people, and if they can't execute it, it's not a great strategy. So we really focus on the people side now and the skill sets, and so it's, I think this is a little complex and it's moving fast. So we tell leaders, this isn't something you can outsource to IT or outsource to other leaders. You have to do it with your own hands. And a lot of the tools are free. So you can go to Chat GPT, Mid-Journey, which is graphics. You can create your own art and graphics, and it's important for you to go do that. You don't have to be the master power user at your office, but you need to understand it so that when you're making decisions, you really get it. What we found, we have Copilot, and at first people are like, oh my gosh, how do you use Copilot? Is this really be great? And you fast forward a month and people are like, I can't, do not take this away. Like, if this is a beta, do not take this away, because you get used to the efficiencies of that. So it tells me in my email if I have told people I'm going to get them something or I owe them something, it will go back and find things, because it's inevitable. You drop something, because you get messages in LinkedIn, you get messages in Teams, you have email, you have, all your text messages, and then sometimes you forget to bring all that together and into one, place of like a dispensary. Like, how am I going to get things back out when I get in? So, so it's complex. It's very complex.
I like this thoughtful approach that you've taken to the implementation, like this people side, because I think, you've been working with it for 12, 13 years. My husband was doing things about the same time, like at his software company, like with machine learning. I have not been in it that long, but you have all these people talking about it now. And it's like, oh, why do you mean you're overworked? Just go to ChatGPT and just go do that thing. And there seems to be a general, disconnect between executives and teams of, oh, just let AI do this thing for you. But it is learning how to utilize the systems, which systems are best for you and the task at hand. And then when it comes back with something, it still needs some finessing. You can't just copy and paste it into whatever you're working on. And I would say in most cases, but so there is this thoughtfulness that I would love to hear more about, like when you're working with someone and they're like, oh yeah, Annette, we need AI. This has to be faster and cheaper. Please do that for our people. And how you're able to talk to them about, like, well, a little bit more involved than that.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of levels. There's a level of the tools and understanding what the tools do and what you're going to invest in with the tools, because there's tools that are redundant, and there's tools that are built into Google or built into Microsoft that makes it easier. You still have to pay for them, but so I think there's a individual contributor aspect of, I can use that to help me create emails, or I one of the first things I asked Chat GPT to do was doing a breakout, and I didn't want people to be in the same breakout twice. So I put all their names in it, and it took me a while because of to figure out the prompt, but I did that in 5 minutes versus me doing the breakout groups, and having to, do that on my own. So there's the simplistic things like that, the day-to-day, create a PowerPoint out of this document, help me understand, the correlation with state law and this, and this legislation, whatever it is. Like there's things like that individually that help us to do our jobs. I think where, organization and leaders need to look at is, what can AI do globally for our organization? So I'll give you an example. There are agents. So it's really AI, and it could be several different AIs combined. But if I fed AI all of my human capital digital assessment documentation, all of my coaching processes, like everything I do, that if I've created a process, a form, a document, a proposal, my website, you feed it into an AI, it becomes probably the smartest employee you have, and it took it literally zero time to onboard and get up to speed. People that work for us, it takes a year. So then I have an agent that can really act on my behalf to take care of a lot of the front end things that I might get, questions, people monitoring my LinkedIn email, whatever those are, so that I can focus on the higher bearing fruit of what I do. So I think there's an aspect of agents that are really cool. I talked on Wednesday about a company, Clever, that's a software development company here, and it's fascinating because they created an agent that had the persona of a client, prospective client. Then they created several AIs that represented their team member. So if you think about you and I having a sales meeting, and you're the client, and you're looking for my services, and we have a conversation, I take notes, I go back, put together a proposal, you look at the proposal. Well, they watch the agents, the client and the team, have a conversation, ask for a service. They presented, here's the services, here's our process. They tweaked things, they got a proposal and signed it in hardly any time at all. So when you start thinking about what are the, if I'm out looking for services, and I can have my AI go find services, do the first 2 interviews for me, bring me back a short list, and then I go meet with those. I mean, there's so many applications. Law firms, if my company is a client, and I have all of my documentations, all of my contracts, my operating agreements, the tax code and law in the states I do business, when I have a question, I could go to an agent first. So instead of the law firm getting the call like, hey, in my operating agreement, the managing partner, blah, 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 I could ask the agent and get that self-served, or a CPA firm. A lot of CPA firms are working on agents. So, we've had chat bots where you go online and ask, chat bot questions, and it's only as good as the information. Well, now AIs learn. They're self-learning. They're large language models, and they self-learn. So, and we have that. If you have Amazon, and you've ever bought anything, and then you get back on and they're like, hey, we found X for you, and you're like, okay, Big Brother's watching me. They're all using technologies that we've had for a long time. So, I think we appreciate it in certain aspects, like health, maybe. If I can wear a watch and it takes in information, and I load blood work and everything, so that if it sees a marker, and again, it can go to large databases of health, and it says, you've had cancer, and you've had long COVID, and you do X, Y, this you should probably be concerned with, because we found 17 cases across the US that's showing X, and this is what they did for it. I mean, then people are like, oh, that's really valuable. Yeah. But in the beginning, I think it's overwhelming. It's a lot, and there's so many levels of application. And so that's why doing things with your own hands and starting to use that in your own productivity helps you understand, just like we used Amazon, and now we might even let Amazon keep a grocery list, and we might even let Amazon automatically order it for us. That helps you understand the benefit of something serving us. And there's risk. There's risk with you buying stuff on Amazon. So, I bought a pair of shoes, still haven't received them. I probably was scammed. There's stuff like that, and it's going to happen with AI as well.
Absolutely. Well, and I want to go back to the audit just a little bit, because I think that's a really interesting thing that you talked about. And no offense to all of our government friends, but we don't usually think of like government leading these things. Usually it's private industry kind of comes in first. And so now that these state governments are saying we need to do these audits, you all are providing them. Have you seen a lot of private sector people go, oh, we need this too? And what does that application look like?
Yeah, we have. And it's different. I think it's in pockets. So what you're talking about, that we have states like Colorado that have legislation passed that tells organizations you have to have an audit on your AI. You have to show it's unbiased. Like there's a bunch of different dimensions of the AI audit. Think cybersecurity audit. It's the same thing, or your financial audit. We want to make sure you're operating in an ethical way, and we are not bringing in bad guys into our country, through AI, things that aren't regulated or we don't know anything about. So the states that have regulated that, so like insurance, CPAs, a lot of these companies, law firms, are getting hired to perform an audit. So that's what we prepared, kind of one of the first audits. We worked with a law firm out of Oklahoma City, and we do work all over the U.S. now with these audits. You will see some of the innovative companies that get out in front. They want to do their own audit, so they're asking for it. And then you see companies that are like, well, it's coming to our state, or it is legislated, we're going to go ahead and get our audit in. So you find people at different places, and then you find a handful that are just socially minded, that things like that matter to them, but they don't have to do it. So it's interesting, but we knew that was going to happen, and so we really started getting out in front of it and talking about that in speeches, which is actually how we were pulled in when things started to drop. Like we work with groups in New York, Colorado, just to name a couple. That's how our name kind of came out, because people had heard us speak and then knew that we would know something about it. And so it didn't take us long to actually create an audit to do. If people have an incident, a cyber incident, it's interesting. Once something like that happens, you could see them coming back to, I don't want to be open, with AIs that our organizations are doing. I don't remember, but like when one of the cool things that can happen with an AI is you can be developing like some software. And I'm not a developer, so I have to take my developer's words right at like, okay, that's the truth. Well, you can have ChatGPT go check the coding and make sure. Well, if I don't know if you remember, early on, Samsung developers dropped their code into not realizing that's public. So all their trade secrets are now public. So there's things like that. So having an AI usage policy and educating people so that they know what is at stake. So we see people using ChatGPT, and now we see organizations creating their own GPTs. So you just see the evolution, but it's moving fast. I mean, it's really moving fast.
Absolutely. And even when I looked at your website, I mean, you have so many services and support ways that you're helping companies out there. So part of that is also coming in and being like, you want to implement these things, and what's best for you, or what's the future look like for them, right?
See what we did there?
Exactly. I love it. So tell me about, I don't know, maybe some of these innovative things, or if there's one thing that maybe stands out that's kind of interesting that you'd like people to know about, something that you've worked on with someone.
Well, we did the state of Oklahoma's AI strategy, so that's really cool. I think another thing that we're doing is we are working within industries, an entire industry. So if you think about I'm trying to think of an industry to give you, let's say banking industry. You've got banks, you've got regulators, you have customers, you have vendors that provide services to banks. So the entire industry. And we have brought an industry together more than one industry, and really help them look at what is the technology in the industry like. So if I'm a customer and I'm going to get a loan, I go to this bank, it's paperwork. I go to this bank, it's paperwork. I go to this bank, it's paperwork. Let's say I get 3 loans. They may not even know that they've all lended to me. So I could be a risk. Like I could have gotten more money than what they should lend to me, or there may be intelligence on me that they could share. So just the data sharing aspects of it. And then it's expensive to build technology. So you have people building technologies, and they're not a shared cost. And so, the big people win. And then the smaller players, we have the heartbeat of America, small business, the smaller vendors or businesses really cannot keep up. And so we're going in and helping them build interoperability and AI that's shared. So they will agree upon standards across their industry, and they will all choose to use those standards because it makes them all better. And it's kind of like the tide rises all boats. That's kind of what happens. So that's really cool. Another thing that we do that's really cool is a think tank. So we go into, we've done a lot in farming, and we will go in and, if you think about combines and tractors, they're not stardom. They're autonomous now. You can have them working without a human on them. Well, so you manufacture that, you drop it off in, Guyman, Oklahoma at the dealership. Those guys are probably not technology people, and it's their son's buddy that grew up on the farm, and now they're selling equipment, and then you're selling to a farmer. Now you've got a lot of younger generation farmers coming in that they're very savvy, but you still have a lot of people that they walk their fields, and they're not using intelligence at all to figure out, do they need to water, do they have a some kind of a crop issue, a disease, or whatever that is. So the communication and training in that industry it's a big gap. It's a chasm. So the one thing that we've done with the think tank is we'll go in, bring people from, let's just say, that industry together and try to solve problems. And so we do these 2-hour think sprints on how do we solve the problem. So then the big manufacturer can take that back, make sure they get the documentation, they're shooting the videos, they're going out to train people on site. Maybe they put somebody on site, maybe that's how they sell more of their combines or tractors. And so the think tanks are really interesting. We do our own think tank. We do a security one that's virtual every year. And then in October of this year, we'll do one, and it's all around AI. And it's a lot around human capital, about the people side of it. And what we're agents and what are doing that. The cool thing about the one we've done, we have created agents, AI agents that will actually be participants in our think tank. So you and I would be there, and then we'd have 4 or 5 agents, and everybody's contributing, but people would get to experience. And then we'll show them, and the very last hour of the think tank, we're going to show them how we created them and what that looks like. And we've been training them for a long time, but getting ready, because you got to train the agent. So the one thing we say is, everything that's in your brain, if you're going to pass it on to somebody you work with or somebody in your family, like what % could you pass on to them? But like, just take a guess.
2%.
Okay, 2%.
Yeah.
So if I have an AI that knows everything, everything that you've worked on, all your past jobs, anything that you've come up with, your lessons learned, experience in AI, okay, if you leave, how much of that can be passed on?
Yeah, not much.
Yeah. So your AI, it can give the next person everything compared to your 2%.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that has to shift in people is, they will work for you. Think about onboarding. I can go on. Just onboarding people.
Absolutely.
And just think, if you have everybody in your organization that's giving lessons I learned about joining this organization and what would have helped me if I had it, kind of things into an agent. Think how smart that agent would be on onboarding.
Yeah.
It'd be like, oh, this is an accounting person. This is important for them to know. Or, hey, the top 5 things that people said they wish they knew.
Right.
Food trucks come on Friday. Don't bring your lunch, or whatever it is, or here's where you find information. And so, I think if people can really, and that's why I think it's so good to learn and read, because it opens your brain on what's possible, not just the scary stuff.
Right. Well, here we are with like OVF. So of course, immediately was just thinking about succession planning.
Oh,
so right, like as soon as you're talking about an acquisition or something along those lines, everyone always says, "Well, what about your founder? What about your CEO? Like, what happens with that person?" Well, I was hoping to sell it and go play on a beach for a while.
Exactly.
But if you had been training your agent the entire time, it's like, well, now that we've signed the paperwork, here you go.
Yeah.
You know, I actually have this thing here
Absolutely.
that every podcast I've done, I've put over here.
I
Everything I've written right
guarantee
here.
you there are founders out there right now that are positioning to exit and sell, and they are creating an agent that will be smarter than they are, that knows everything that they are, so they don't have to sign that, you know, agreement to stay on.
No golden handcuffs, none of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm putting this on my to-do list
Yeah,
because I hope that's one of my in my
yes.
future one day. And so,
Yeah.
definitely going to start this.
Yeah. Like, I mean, and all the lessons learned, because it wouldn't be just that startup. It could be every startup you've done that you've learned, you know, along the way.
Right.
And so,
your life experiences, all the things you like. I could take my grad school stuff and put it in there because it informs all the other things I'm doing, even though they don't seem related. They like, I'm in.
I'm telling you, you should try to go create an agent. It's not that hard. We had college students that didn't know anything about it. Create one, demoed it for us. There's ones that are voice activated, and then there's ones that you have to put the prompts in. But you know, and they all did different topics and things that were more aligned. We had marketing, and we had one that was actually a finance major, so he did one on investing and what that looks like, and it was really cool. It was really cool.
So for our listeners, if they want to go create an agent, where would you suggest they start?
Well, there's a lot. I will actually, I will give you a bunch of resources you can put in the podcast notes.
Perfect.
Because it's a lot, but there's things you can go read. There's one website that's probably great that you can go just to learn, and then they can kind of pick which one they want to. There's one, Character AI, which is interesting because it actually creates a character, and then that character becomes the spokesperson of, you know, for your AI. So, but there's lots of them, but I'll give you resources to put in for the listeners.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Like, we've definitely had our kids start. So my daughter uses Dolly to do some of her art things. And we've introduced Callaway's more written word. So he uses ChatGPT and things like that. So it's definitely something I think we can all learn and implement for ourselves and for our kiddos. Because like, what'd you call it? The out brain?
The outward brain.
The outward brain, because they're, I mean, my kids are young. And so they're definitely utilizing this.
Well,
really.
and they're in the generation A that, you know, they're A and B generations coming up, they will not know anything but AI. So could you imagine, like, it's a gap for a young 20-something to go work for some companies. When I started, I remember they're like, you can't be on the internet. Like, we're not having that business. You cannot be on the internet, you know, and you're like, okay, that is really one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. But that company said that. Well, then you have companies going, in schools, you can't use AI. And it's like, that ship sailed. Like, you need to figure out how to utilize it. So I talked about the school in Austin that they're not hiring certified teachers. They have AIs that are teaching the content, and they can teach at whatever level that student needs. And then they have guides. You and I could be a guide because we care about the generation, and we're helping them with speaking skills, and they're learning robotics and critical thinking. They're learning things that they could actually use in life. And they cut 6 hours of curriculum content down to 2 by using AIs. So, you know, like, just anytime you hear like teacher shortage, there are people who'll be like, oh, we can solve that with AI. You know, we don't have enough people coming out with accounting majors. Guess what? You know, you think there's going to be audits, you know, auditors where people go and sit in a room with boxes and boxes of information. You know, at some point, all of that will already be absorbed, and they'll have agents that run audits nonstop. Like, you're not going to need that 2-week chicken scratch auditor in your, you know, it will be like carbon paper. If you still are using carbon paper, we probably need to talk about a process. You have a big gap to catch up with.
Absolutely. So, okay, what is the, like, because you're so future thinking, and I want to follow you around everywhere that you go. Like, this is really fascinating. But what's another thing that's sort of on the horizon that you're like, okay, this will be the next thing to watch out for? Is there something in mind?
Quantum computing. So everybody should go look up quantum computing. So it's really when encryption, you know, is not really there for security. what happens to the world. So, but go look up that. We should
Okay.
do another one on quantum computing, because
Yes,
that is the
please.
next. That will be kind of the next wave, we think.
Okay, thank you. Well, one question we always like to ask everybody is, because we are Oklahoma Venture Forum and we're always thinking about, the future and how to be better in Oklahoma, is what's your piece of advice that you may have for an Oklahoma business person or an entrepreneur?
Well, I feel like I've lived through building businesses when there's just not, I always say, when you need money, nobody will lend it to you. And then when you don't need money, everybody wants to lend it to you. So, that kind of thing. Or when you need people, you can't afford to hire them. And so for me, I think I wish I would have known that who you get advice from truly matters. So, and I'm talking family, I just have a hard rule on whatever it is. If I'm going to take input from somebody or criticism from somebody, even if it's, it's really good feedback, they need to have skin in the game I'm playing. They need to be in the trench that I'm in the ring. And if they have never built a business, then they're going to tell me how to build a business. Probably doesn't hold a lot of weight. If they've built a business, even if they failed, I'm going to listen. So I think who you put around you is really important. And so getting advisors early that have done the thing, they don't have to do the exact business, but have built a business. They haven't been able to make payroll. They've had to be creative. They raised money. They, brought shoestrapped, off their bootstrap their business, whatever that is. I think that's really important, is to get the right people around you early. Yeah. Because too often we listen to a spouse or a sibling or parent, and they kill the dream out of their own fear, but they've not ever done that. And so I see it all the time.
Absolutely.
So I think if you can get advisors, either they'll talk you out of doing something and you won't make as big a mistake, or they'll help what you're doing make it a lot better.
Yeah.
And so I wish I would have known that early on, because I just would run through walls. I didn't know what I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And I'd always think, well, how hard can that be? Like, that can't be that hard. And it's like, no, it is hard.
Right? It is.
It's complicated. It's kind of hard. So,
yeah. I feel that so much. Like, from the difference of my first business to my second, I didn't know how to think big. Yeah. I just knew how to think of like what I had in my worldview, which makes sense. But then when I built my marketing assistant, I was able to lean into people that just had a bigger worldview and knew of other things, and really challenged my thinking in order to say, like, oh, wow, this is totally different than where I was. I took like my little seed and turned it into something so much bigger, because I did have some of those people around me later.
Vision is important. Playing big. There's actually a book called Playing Big that I think is really good, because we get in our own way. It's usually not a market dynamic, or sometimes it's funding, but it usually doesn't like really get in our way to stop us. It's a big obstacle, but we get in our own way. And we don't know what we don't know, and being pushed or having somebody help you see something is really good. So I think playing big, I even say, when I do a lot of executive coaching, I'll say playing big could be stepping out of that big job to do what you're passionate about. That could be big for somebody, to really align to what they're passionate about. Might be a huge step for them. And so it doesn't always have to be motivated by making more money, building a bigger business. It could be keeping your business a lifestyle business. It could be, not building the business around something you're passionate about, but letting your work you do funnel a great hobby. I mean, it shows up differently, but I think the mindset is just don't get in your own way.
Yeah.
And we all do that. I mean, we all have those self-limited beliefs or things that kind of get us to be held back.
Absolutely. Well, before this turns into a coaching session for me, we should probably tell everyone bye. I'm also going to add the Playing Big to the show notes and add it to my own personal reading list. So thank you for that recommendation. Yeah. Well, if you're wanting to learn more about the future point of view, it's fpov.com. And Annette Klosowski, you can probably find her also on LinkedIn and everywhere else. So thank you for joining us today on the Oklahoma Venture Forum podcast. Until next time.